Did you know that up to 60% of your daily calories might be coming from foods that are slowly killing you? Chris Van Tulleken's shocking journey into the world of ultra-processed foods reveals a hidden danger lurking in our everyday meals. But what exactly are ultra-processed foods? They're food products made mostly for industrial use, packed with additives, seed oils, emulsifiers, and preservatives you won't find in your typical home cooking. They're designed for profit and long shelf life, not your health. Dr. Chris Van Tulleken set out to discover in his daring experiment with ultra-processed foods. He first created a baseline and spent 1 month eating only whole, minimally processed foods, fresh fruits, vegetables, whole grains, and lean proteins. No packaged snacks, no sugary cereals, no frozen dinners, just real, recognizable ingredients. Sounds pretty healthy, right? But for the next month, he switches to a diet where a whopping 80% of his calories come from ultra-processed foods. We're talking about all those convenience foods that line our supermarket shelves. The chips, the sodas, the ready-made meals, and yes, even those healthy protein bars. But before we dive into the results, let's break down what actually counts as ultra-processed. The NOVA classification system, developed by researchers in Brazil to categorize foods based on their level of processing, gives us a clear picture. It divides foods into 4 groups. Group 1 includes unprocessed or minimally processed foods. Think fresh fruits, vegetables, and meats. Group 2 consists of processed culinary ingredients like oils, vinegar, and sugar. Group 3 covers processed foods such as canned vegetables or freshly made bread. And then there's Group 4, the ultra-processed foods. These are industrial formulations made primarily from substances extracted from foods or derived from other organic sources. They often contain little to no whole foods and are packed with additives you'd never find in a home kitchen. Sodas, packaged snacks, and many frozen meals fall into this category. Understanding this classification helps us see just how prevalent UPFs have become in our daily lives. That colorful cereal box in your pantry, the convenient microwavable meal in your freezer, they're likely ultra-processed. But concerns about food quality aren't new. Back in 1837, a man named Sylvester Graham raised alarms about what he called public bread. He warned that commercial bakers were using inferior ingredients, prioritizing profit over nutrition and health. Graham was worried that these mass-produced breads were less nutritious and potentially harmful compared to homemade bread. He advocated for whole wheat flour and warned against the dangers of processed white flour. In many ways, he was ahead of his time. Fast forward to today, and we're facing a similar but much more complex challenge with ultra-processed foods. The industrial food system that Graham was just beginning to see in his time has now become a global behemoth, churning out products that are engineered for maximum palatability, convenience, and profit. Unlike in Graham's day, we now have the tools and knowledge to scientifically investigate the effects of these foods on our bodies. And that's exactly what Van Tulleken set out to do with his experiment. So, what happened when he switched to a diet dominated by ultra-processed foods? Tulleken experienced shifts in his body and mind that went far beyond what you might expect from simply changing your diet. We're talking about alterations in brain chemistry, disruptions to natural hunger signals, and even changes in behavior that hint at the addictive nature of these foods. Tulleken's experiment didn't just reveal the obvious impacts of a poor diet. It uncovered something far more insidious about how these foods might be affecting our bodies and our behaviors. During his month on a UPF-heavy diet, Tulleken experienced a range of negative health effects that went far beyond just putting on a few pounds. Within days, Tulleken began experiencing intense anxiety and exhaustion. His productivity plummeted. It wasn't just a physical change. His mental state took a nosedive too. But why? What's in these foods that could cause such a rapid and severe reaction? The answer lies in how UPFs interact with our bodies, particularly our brains. These foods aren't just empty calories. They're designed to hijack our natural hunger signals. Have you ever found yourself mindlessly munching on chips or cookies, unable to stop even when you're full? That's not just a lack of willpower. It's a carefully engineered response. UPFs often contain a perfect storm of sugar, salt, and fat, a combination that lights up our brain's reward centers like a Christmas tree. It's not unlike the effect of certain drugs. In fact, studies have shown that the brain's response to UPFs can mimic addiction-like behaviors. You're not just eating food. It's a carefully calculated product designed to maximize consumption and profits. they're not just about convenience. Softer foods are easier to eat quickly, which means we're consuming more calories before our body has a chance to signal that we're full. It's a perfect recipe for overeating and weight gain. A study found that people on a UPF-heavy diet consumed about 500 more calories per day compared to those eating unprocessed foods. That might not sound like much, but over time, those extra calories add up. And weight gain is just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to health risks associated with UPFs. A 10% increase in UPF consumption is linked to a 12% higher risk of developing cancer. Let that sink in for a moment. Every time you reach for that packaged snack or sugary drink, you're not just satisfying a craving, you're potentially increasing your cancer risk. But cancer isn't the only concern. UPFs have been linked to a whole host of health issues. Type 2 diabetes, cardiovascular diseases, heart disease, obesity, the list goes on. It's like these foods are a one-way ticket to early death. And it's not just about what these foods contain, it's also about what they're lacking. UPFs often replace whole, nutrient-dense foods in our diets. So not only are we consuming potentially harmful ingredients, but we're also missing out on the vitamins, minerals, and fiber our bodies need to function properly. Let's zoom in on one particularly concerning aspect: how UPFs affect our gut microbiome. You've probably heard about the importance of gut health, right? Well, the additives and artificial ingredients in UPFs can wreak havoc on our gut bacteria. This disruption can lead to inflammation, which in turn contributes to various health issues, including obesity and metabolic disorders. At this point, you might be wondering, are these even really foods? Tulleken doesn't think so. He describes UPFs as not food. It's an industrially produced edible substance. It's a stark reminder that what we're putting into our bodies is often far removed from anything found in nature. UPFs aren't just affecting our physical health. There's growing evidence suggesting a link between UPF consumption and mental health issues. It's a vicious cycle. These foods can make us feel worse, which in turn might lead us to seek comfort in more unhealthy eating habits. We've seen how ultra-processed foods affect our bodies, but the impact goes far beyond our personal health. These foods are reshaping entire communities and even our planet. Let's zoom out and look at the bigger picture. Have you ever noticed that some neighborhoods seem to have more fast food joints than grocery stores? This isn't a coincidence. In many low-income areas, access to fresh, nutritious food is limited. These places are often called food deserts, where the landscape is dominated by convenience stores and fast food outlets. Guess what they're selling? You got it, ultra-processed foods. But why are UPFs so prevalent in these communities? It's not just about convenience. When you're struggling to make ends meet, the cheap, long-lasting nature of UPFs becomes incredibly appealing. When your budget is tight, the immediate need to eat often trumps concerns about nutritional quality. Many people in low-income communities juggle multiple jobs, leaving little time for cooking. UPFs are marketed as time-saving solutions, fitting neatly into hectic schedules. It's a perfect storm of economic constraints and time poverty, driving people towards these potentially harmful foods. Those with lower education are less likely to understand the complexities of nutrition and the health risks associated with UPFs. This makes them more vulnerable to the clever marketing tactics of food companies. The food industry's practices are often deceptive and exploitative, especially when targeting vulnerable populations. They use bright colors, catchy jingles, and even cartoon characters to make their products appealing, particularly to children. The production of ultra-processed foods is taking a significant toll on our environment. You might be wondering, what do my snack choices have to do with the planet? As it turns out, quite a lot. The production of UPFs relies heavily on a few high-yield commodity crops. This drives deforestation and contributes significantly to carbon emissions. The Amazon rainforest, often called the lungs of the earth. Large areas of this vital ecosystem are being cleared to grow crops like soy and palm oil, key ingredients in many ultra-processed foods. When these forests are destroyed, it's not just the trees we're losing. It's releasing massive amounts of stored carbon into the atmosphere, accelerating climate change. And it doesn't stop there. This deforestation disrupts local weather patterns, affecting communities and ecosystems far beyond the immediate area. But it's not just about what's happening in far-off rainforests. What about all the plastic packaging that comes with UPFs? All those individually wrapped snacks and microwavable meals contribute to the growing problem of plastic pollution. This packaging ends up in our landfills, our oceans, and even in our bodies in the form of microplastics. So, what can we do about all this? Tulleken emphasizes the need for systemic changes. We're talking about better food policies, community initiatives, and public health education. It's not just about telling people to eat better. It's about creating an environment where making healthier choices is easier and more accessible. We need policies that improve access to affordable, nutritious foods. This could mean incentives for grocery stores to open in food deserts or subsidies for fresh produce. We need to address the socioeconomic factors that drive people towards UPFs in the first place. But here's where it gets tricky. Tulleken argues that government officials shouldn't accept funding from food companies. Why? Because it creates a conflict of interest. How can we trust our policymakers to prioritize public health if they're in the pocket of the very companies profiting from UPFs? If you enjoyed this summary, please subscribe to our channel.